My name is Harold Jenkins. I'm 72 years old and I live in Springfield, Missouri. My own son hasn't answered my call in 8 months. I remember the day Ryan left for Denver like it was yesterday. June morning, bright and warm. He stood in my driveway with that grin I'd seen his whole life, half pride, half nerves, and told me about the promotion. Sales manager, corner office, real future, he said. I shook his hand, pulled him close, and told him I was proud, because I was. That first month we talked every day. He'd call after work, tell me about the mountains, the traffic, how different everything felt. Then it was every few days, then weekends, then nothing. I'd leave messages, short ones at first. Hey, Rye, just checking in. Call when you can. Then longer. Son, it's your old man. Haven't heard from you. Hope everything's all right. I kept my voice steady, kept it light. I didn't want him to think I was needy, but the phone never rang back. I told myself he was busy. New city, new responsibilities, probably meeting people, building a life. That's what you want for your kid, isn't it? You raise them to stand on their own. You don't raise them to call every day like they're still 12. Still, I'd check my phone 20 times a morning. Look at the screen before bed. Nothing. 8 months is a long time to wonder if your son's okay. It's a long time to wonder if you did something wrong. Maybe I pushed too hard when he was young. Maybe I didn't push enough. Maybe he just needed space and I was supposed to know that without being told. The thing is, I raised Ryan alone after his mother died. He was 16. Cancer took her in 4 months. One day she was folding laundry and the next day she couldn't get out of bed. Ryan and we leaned on each other through that. We had to. I thought that meant something permanent. I thought we were solid. My 72nd birthday came on a Tuesday. I didn't tell anyone it was my birthday because I'm not the kind of man who needs a fuss. I made myself a pot roast, sat at the kitchen table, and looked at my phone. No missed calls, no messages, no text saying, "Happy birthday, Dad." I set the phone face down and ate in silence. The clock on the wall ticked. The house felt bigger than it ever had. I thought about calling him again, but I'd already left 3 messages that week. A man has his pride. So I just sat there, staring at the plate, wondering when my son decided I didn't matter anymore. I'd rather chew glass than tell the truth to the fellas at the VFW. Every Thursday night, same table, same 4 guys I've known since before Ryan was born. They ask about him because they watched him grow up. They remember when I brought him in as a kid, let him sit at the bar with a Coke while we played cards. "How's Ryan doing out in Denver?" Ed asked one night, shuffling the deck. "Good," I said. "Real good. Busy with the new job." "He settled in okay?" "Yeah, love it out there." Ed nodded, dealt the cards. I picked up my hand and pretended to study it, but all I could see was my phone, sitting silent in my pocket. I told them Ryan was thriving because I didn't know how to say he'd stopped calling. I told them he was happy because admitting I didn't know felt like admitting I'd failed. These men respected me. I wasn't about to become the guy whose son forgot about him. But at home, alone, I couldn't lie to myself as easily. I'd walk past Ryan's old room and remember teaching him to tie his shoes on that bed. I'd see his high school baseball trophy on the shelf and remember driving him to practice 3 nights a week for 4 years. I never missed a game, not one. I taught him to throw a curveball in the backyard. Spent hours showing him the grip, the release, how to make it break just right. He got good at it too, good enough to pitch varsity his junior year. After every game, win or lose, we'd stop at the diner and talk about what he did right, what he could fix. He listened to me back then. I paid for his college. It wasn't easy on a railroad pension, but I did it. Every semester, every book, every fee. I wanted him to have what I didn't. I wanted him to start cleaning. I walked him down the aisle at his wedding 3 years ago. His bride was a sweet girl named Michelle, who worked as a teacher. I shook her hand, welcomed her to the family, told her I'd always be there if they needed anything. The wedding was beautiful. Ryan looked happy. I thought I'd done my job, but somewhere between then and now, I became optional. I started checking my bank statements more carefully. Not because I was worried about money. I lived simple, didn't need much, but because it gave me something to do, something to focus on besides the silence. That's when I noticed the first withdrawal. My dead wife's money was disappearing faster than snow in April, and only one other person could touch it. The account was supposed to be for emergencies. Carol and I opened it when Ryan was born. We added to it every month, not much, but steady. After she died, I kept adding. Figured if Ryan ever got in real trouble, medical bills, job loss, something serious, he'd have a cushion. I added him to the account when he turned 25, told him it was there if he ever needed it, but only for emergencies. He looked me in the eye and said, "I won't touch it unless I have to, Dad." I believed him. The first withdrawal was $4,000. August. I stared at the line on the statement, trying to remember if Ryan had called, if he'd mentioned some kind of emergency. He hadn't. I told myself maybe he'd explain later. Maybe it was something he didn't want to worry me about. Then another $3,000 in September, another $5,000 in October. I got out my red pen and started circling. My hand shook a little as I added it up. $17,000 in 3 months. I called the bank. The woman on the phone was polite, professional. She confirmed the withdrawals were legitimate, authorized by the account holder. That meant Ryan. She couldn't tell me what he used the money for. I sat at the kitchen table with the statement spread in front of me, those red circles staring back like wounds. Carol and I saved that money for 30 years. We skipped vacations, drove old cars, fixed things ourselves instead of hiring help. Every dollar in that account represented something we didn't buy, some small sacrifice we made because we wanted Ryan to be safe. And now, it was just gone. I wanted to call him. I wanted to hear his voice and have him explain. Tell me there was a good reason. Tell me I was worrying over nothing. But he hadn't answered my calls in months. What made me think he'd answer now? I thought about the promotion he'd mentioned. Sales manager. Corner office. If the job was as good as he said, why would he need to drain a savings account? I folded the statement and put it in my shirt pocket, right over my heart. The clock on the wall ticked. The house felt cold. I looked at my phone one more time, thought about leaving another message, then set it back down. Some questions you can't ask over voicemail. Some things you can't fix over the phone. Some things you have to look a man in the eye to settle. I packed my Ford pickup on a Sunday morning. Didn't tell anyone where I was going. Didn't see the point in explaining until I knew what I was explaining. I threw a duffel bag in the back, a couple changes of clothes, shaving kit, the bank statement folded in my wallet. 1,100 miles. I'd driven longer before, but not in a few years. Not since Carol got sick, and I stopped taking trips. The truck was old but reliable. I'd kept up with the oil changes, rotated the tires, treated it the way you're supposed to treat things you depend on. I filled the tank at the station on the edge of town. The kid working the register asked if I was going somewhere special. I told him just to drive. He smiled, said enjoy, and handed me my change. I got back in the truck and headed west. The first few hours, I practiced what I'd say. I'd knock on Ryan's door, keep my voice calm, and ask him straight. "Son, I need to know what's going on. I need to know why you're not calling, and I need to know about the money." Simple, direct, no anger, no accusations. Just a father asking his son for the truth. But the farther I drove, the harder it got to keep my voice calm in my head. I thought about forgiving him before I even got there. That's what fathers do, isn't it? Your kid screws up, you forgive them. You help them fix it. You don't hold grudges. I'd forgiven Ryan plenty of times before. Broken windows, wrecked cars, bad decisions with worse friends. That's part of raising someone. But this felt different. This wasn't a broken window. This was $17,000 and 8 months of silence. This was my wife's memory being spent on something Ryan wouldn't even talk to me about. The bank statement rode shotgun. Every time I glanced over, I saw that folded paper and felt my jaw tighten. I stopped for gas in Kansas. I ate a sandwich at a rest stop in Colorado. I watched the mountains rise up ahead of me, big and silent and indifferent. I'd never been to Denver before. Ryan had invited me out once right after he moved, but I'd told him I'd come later. Didn't want to crowd him while he was settling in. Now I wished I'd come then. Maybe if I'd seen his life sooner, I'd understand what was happening now. The sun set behind me. I drove into the night, hands steady on the wheel, mind turning over questions I didn't have answers for. By the time I crossed into the Denver city limits, it was past midnight. I found a motel off the highway, cheap and clean enough, paid cash, carried my bag to the room, and sat on the edge of the bed. My phone sat next to me. I thought about calling Ryan, telling him I was in town, but if he wouldn't answer my calls from Missouri, he wouldn't answer one from 2 miles away. No, I'd do this in person. I turned off the light and lay back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the interstate outside. Tomorrow, I'll get my answers. My boy grew up in a 3-bedroom ranch with a leaky roof. This place looked like it belonged to a movie star. I pulled up slowly, checking the GPS 3 times to make sure I had it right. The address Ryan gave me 2 years ago, back when he first moved. I'd written it down in my address book, the old leather one Carol gave me for our 20th anniversary. Never thought I'd need to use it like this. The neighborhood didn't match anything Ryan had described. He'd talked about a starter apartment near downtown, something small but nice, close to work. This was 15 miles outside the city, tucked into rolling hills with street names like Panorama Ridge and Vista Summit. Every house sat back from the road behind iron gates or stone walls. The lawns looked painted green, not a dandelion anywhere. Trees trimmed perfect, driveways smooth as glass. I saw a woman jogging past in clothes that probably cost more than my winter heating bill. Luxury SUVs in every driveway, Range Rovers, Cadillac Escalades, a Tesla or two. My Ford pickup rattled as I drove, the suspension creaking over speed bumps, designed to keep out people like me. The GPS voice said, "You have arrived." I stopped at the curb and stared. 3 stories, red brick with white columns, windows everywhere, tall and bright, the kind that let in so much light you'd never need to turn on a lamp. A 4-car garage with doors that looked hand-carved, landscaping that probably required a crew. I sat there with the engine running, dust from 1,100 miles coating my windshield. Ryan grew up sharing a bathroom with me. We had one TV that got 4 channels if the antenna was pointed right. When the furnace broke his senior year, we heated the house with space heaters and wore coats indoors until I could afford the repair. I taught him to patch drywall, change his own oil, fix a running toilet. I taught him that you don't buy what you can't pay for, and you don't live beyond your means. This house wasn't beyond means. This house was beyond reason. A man in golf clothes walked past with a golden retriever, glanced at my truck, kept walking. I saw his expression. I knew what he was thinking. Wrong neighborhood, old man. I turned off the engine. My hands felt stiff on the steering wheel. I looked at the house again, counted the windows, and tried to imagine Ryan living here. I tried to imagine how a sales manager's salary paid for this. The bank statement was still in my wallet. $17,000. I thought about the joint account, about Carol putting $20 aside every week, hiding it in an envelope in her drawer so we'd have something for emergencies. Over the years, we ate hamburgers instead of steak and patched clothes instead of buying new ones. The numbers didn't add up. They didn't come close. I opened the truck door and stepped out. My boots hit the pavement, worn leather and scuffed toes. I looked down at myself, flannel shirt, blue jeans, canvas jacket with a coffee stain I'd never quite gotten out. I didn't belong here, but my son did apparently. I walked up the driveway, past a fountain I hadn't noticed before, water trickling over stacked stones. The front door was solid wood, 10 feet tall, with a brass knocker shaped like a lion's head. I reached up and knocked 3 times. The sound echoed inside, deep and hollow, like knocking on a cathedral door. She smiled like a car salesman and called me sir 3 times in 10 seconds. The door opened, and I found myself looking at a woman I'd never seen before, 30, maybe 35, athletic build, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore black yoga pants and a designer jacket with a logo I didn't recognize. Her nails were done perfectly, her teeth were too white, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Can I help you, sir?" she said, standing in the doorway like a guard. "I'm looking for Ryan Jenkins," I said. "I'm his father." Her smile faltered, just for a second, but I caught it. "Oh," she said. "Ryan didn't mention you were coming, sir. That's because he doesn't know." She glanced over her shoulder, then back at me. "He's not home right now. Can I tell him you stopped by? I'll wait. I'm not sure when he'll be back, sir." Third time with the sir. I've been called sir before, plenty of times, but never like this. Never like I was a door-to-door salesman she was trying to politely dismiss. "Who are you?" I asked. "I'm Amber." She extended her hand. Her grip was firm, practiced. "Ryan's fiancé." That word hit me like a slap. "Fiancé," I repeated. "Ryan's engaged?" "For 6 months now." She held up her left hand. The diamond was bigger than anything I'd ever seen outside a jewelry store window. "We're planning a spring wedding." I stared at the ring. 6 months. Ryan had been engaged for 6 months and never told me. Never called, never sent a photo, never asked if I wanted to be there when he proposed. "I'm sorry," Amber said, lowering her hand. "I assumed you knew." "No," I said quietly. "I didn't know." She shifted her weight, uncomfortable now. Behind her I could see into the house. Marble floors, a chandelier hanging in the entryway, a staircase that curved up to the second floor like something out of a magazine. On the wall, I saw framed photos. Ryan in a tuxedo with Amber in a silver dress. Ryan on a boat, ocean stretching behind him, sunglasses and a tan. Ryan holding a glass of champagne at some event, people in suits laughing around him. I didn't recognize my son in those pictures. "Can I come in?" I asked. Amber hesitated. "Ryan really should be here. I drove 1,100 miles, I said. "I'm not leaving until I talk to him." She looked at me for a long moment, weighing something I couldn't see. Then she stepped aside. "You can wait in the living room, sir," she said. I stepped past her into the house. The air smelled like expensive candles. The floors gleamed. Everything was white or cream or soft gray, spotless and arranged like a showroom. I saw a vase on a side table that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Amber closed the door behind me. "Can I get you something to drink? Water? Coffee?" "I'm fine." She nodded, still smiling that tight smile. "Make yourself comfortable. I'll try calling Ryan." She walked away, heels clicking on the marble, and disappeared into another room. I stood there alone, looking around at my son's life. There was another photo on the mantel. Ryan holding a check, one of those oversized novelty checks people use for presentations. I stepped closer and read the amount. $50,000. From the Jenkins Family Trust. My chest tightened. That trust was supposed to be for grandchildren. Carol and I set it up before she died. Money for Ryan's kids to use for college or a house or whatever they needed when they grew up. Ryan didn't have kids. I looked at the photo again. Ryan's smile was wide, his arm around Amber. The check was dated 4 months ago. The last time he called me Dad with that much poison in his voice. He was 16, and I'd grounded him for a month. Amber came back 10 minutes later and told me Ryan wasn't answering. She suggested I come back tomorrow and said she'd make sure he knew I'd stopped by. Her voice was polite, but her eyes said something else. They said, "Please leave." I told her I'd wait outside. She didn't argue. I walked out to the porch and sat down on the steps. The concrete was cold through my jeans. I watched the street, watched cars drive by, watched the sun move across the sky. An hour passed. Then 2. Neighbors walked past with strollers and dogs. A few glanced at me. One man slowed down, like he was thinking about asking if I needed help. I met his eyes, and he kept walking. I felt like a stray dog someone forgot to feed. My back started to ache from sitting. I stood up, stretched, walked to the end of the driveway and back. Amber came to the window once, looked out at me, then disappeared again. 3 hours. 4. The sun dropped lower. The air got colder. I zipped up my jacket and sat back down. I thought about leaving, thought about getting in my truck and driving to a hotel, calling Ryan from there, doing this the civilized way. But I'd already tried to be civilized. I'd left messages, sent texts, waited 8 months for a phone call that never came. This was the only way I'd get answers. A little past 5, I heard an engine, low rumble, expensive sound. I looked up and saw a black Mercedes coming down the street, fast and smooth. It turned into the driveway and stopped 20 feet from where I sat. The door opened. Ryan stepped out. He looked good, fit, tan, hair styled in a way I'd never seen before. He wore a suit that fit him like it was painted on, shoes that shined even in the fading light. For a second, he didn't see me. He was looking at his phone, scrolling, completely absorbed. Then he glanced up. His face went white. "Dad?" His voice cracked. "What the hell are you doing here?" I stood up slowly. My knees popped. I looked at my son, this stranger in a tailored suit, and kept my voice level. "Hello, Ryan." He stared at me like I'd risen from the dead. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. You can't just show up like this." "I called," I said. "You didn't answer." "I've been busy." "For 8 months?" He looked away, jaw tight. "This isn't a good time, Dad." "Then when is it?" He didn't answer. He glanced at the house, at Amber's silhouette in the window, then back at me. His expression shifted. The shock faded. Something else replaced it. Something cold. "You should have called first," he said. "I did. 37 times. His face flushed. "Look, I don't need you showing up and embarrassing me." "Embarrassing you?" I stepped closer. "I'm your father, Ryan. I know who you are." The poison in those words stopped me cold. I'd heard my son angry before. I'd heard him frustrated, disappointed, hurt, but I'd never heard him sound like this. Like he wished I wasn't standing there. Like I was a problem he needed to solve. He ran a hand through his hair, looked at the sky, then back at me. "Fine, come inside, but we're going to have a short conversation, and then you're leaving." He walked past me toward the door. I followed him into the house. I taught that boy to save his grass-cutting money in a coffee can. Now he's drinking wine that costs more than my Social Security check. Ryan didn't offer me a seat. He stood in the entryway with his arms crossed while Amber watched from the kitchen, pretending to wipe down counters that were already spotless. "So," Ryan said, "you drove all the way out here." "I did. Because I didn't call you back. Because $17,000 disappeared from our account, and you won't answer your phone." His jaw clenched. Amber stopped wiping. "That's what this is about?" Ryan said. "Money? That's what I'm asking you." He laughed, short and bitter. "Unbelievable. Ryan, come on," he said, turning toward the living room. "Let me show you around, since you drove all this way." I followed him through the house. The living room had ceilings 20 feet high, a sectional couch that could seat 12 people wrapped around a glass coffee table. An 80-inch television hung on the wall above a fireplace I doubted anyone ever used. Everything looked like it came from a catalog. "Nice, right?" Ryan said, his voice tight. "This is what success looks like, Dad." We walked into the kitchen. White marble countertops, stainless, steel appliances, an island bigger than my dining room table. A wine fridge hummed in the corner, glass door showing rows of bottles laid horizontal. Ryan opened it and pulled one out. $40 Pinot Noir. "Want a glass?" "No." He poured himself one anyway. Took a long sip, watching me over the rim. "You hit it big in crypto," I said, remembering what Amber had told me earlier. "That's right." "When?" "Last year. Bought in early. Sold at the peak." I looked around the kitchen. I looked at the wine fridge, the espresso machine that probably cost $1,000, the chef's stove with 8 burners. "How much did you make?" I asked. "Enough. Enough to buy this house. Enough to live the life I want." I walked to the counter and saw a stack of mail. Credit card offers, luxury catalogs, an invitation to some charity gala. I picked up an envelope from a car dealership, a thank you note for purchasing a vehicle. "You bought a Mercedes," I said. "2, actually. Amber's in the garage." I set the envelope down. My hands were steady, but my chest felt tight. "Ryan," I said quietly, "where did the money come from?" He took another sip of wine. "I told you. Crypto. And the $17,000 from our account? I needed it. For what? Does it matter?" "Yes." He slammed the glass down on the counter. Wine sloshed over the rim. "I needed it for investments, Dad. I needed capital to make more money. And it worked. Look around. It worked." I looked at him, really looked at him. My son, who I'd raised to be honest, to work hard, to respect what people gave him. "That money was your mother's," I said. His face twitched. "She's been gone for 16 years. That doesn't mean it stopped being hers. It's mine now too. You put my name on the account. For emergencies. This was an emergency, he snapped. I had an opportunity and I took it. I walked past him into the dining room, a table that could seat 14 people, crystal chandelier overhead, framed art on the walls, abstracts that probably cost more than my truck. On the sideboard, I saw another photo. Ryan holding that oversized check again. $50,000 from the family trust. I picked it up. You cashed out the trust, I said. Ryan followed me into the room. I'm allowed to. It's my trust. It was for your children. I don't have children, Dad. And when I do, I'll set up a better trust. With what? More money you took without asking? His face went red. I didn't take anything. It's legally mine. That doesn't make it right. Right? He laughed again, sharper this time. You want to talk to me about right? You lived in that falling apart house for 40 years. You drove the same truck since I was in high school. You never went anywhere, never did anything, just worked and saved and acted like suffering made you noble. I stood there, holding the photo, feeling something crack inside my chest. I didn't want that life, Ryan continued. I wanted more, and I got it. I'm sorry if that offends you. It doesn't offend me, I said quietly. It breaks my heart. He looked away. I set the photo down and walked back toward the entryway. Amber had disappeared. The house felt enormous and empty. I'm staying at a motel off I-70, I said. Room 112. When you're ready to have a real conversation, you know where to find me. Ryan didn't answer. I walked out the door and down the driveway to my truck. My hands shook as I unlocked it. I sat behind the wheel and stared at that big, beautiful house, at the life my son had built with money that wasn't his. Then I started the engine and drove away. Son, either we talk like men tonight, or I call the sheriff in the morning, and we talk like criminals. I made it halfway to the motel before I turned around. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. I could see the exit coming up, the sign for the motel glowing in the dark. All I had to do was take the turn, check in, lie down, and let the day end. But I kept driving, past the exit, back toward the neighborhood, back toward that house that didn't belong to my son, but somehow had his name on it. I pulled into the driveway at 7:30. The lights were on inside. Through the windows, I could see Ryan moving around, phone pressed to his ear, pacing. I got out and knocked on the door. Amber answered. Her smile was gone. Mr. Jenkins? Ryan said you left? I'm staying, I said. Excuse me? I'm not leaving until this gets settled. So either I sleep in my truck in your driveway, or you give me a guest room. She stared at me. Behind her, Ryan appeared, still holding his phone. Dad, you can't just... I can, I said. And I am. Ryan's jaw worked. He looked at Amber, then back at me. This is ridiculous. Then fix it. Talk to me like a man, and I'll leave in the morning. The silence stretched between us. A car drove past on the street. Somewhere a dog barked. Finally, Ryan stepped aside. Fine, he said. One night. I walked in and set my duffel bag by the door. Amber excused herself and went upstairs without another word. I heard a door close, heard the lock click. Ryan stood in the foyer, arms crossed, looking anywhere but at me. You hungry? He asked. I could eat. He walked into the kitchen and opened the massive refrigerator, pulled out 2 steaks wrapped in butcher paper, vegetables, and a bottle of wine. He moved around the kitchen like he'd done this 1,000 times, preheating the stove, seasoning the meat. I sat on the island and watched him cook. Neither of us spoke. 20 minutes later, he set a plate in front of me. Perfectly cooked steak, roasted asparagus, mashed potatoes that looked like something from a restaurant. He sat across from me with his own plate and cut into his steak. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the bank statements, unfolded them slowly, and laid them on the marble countertop between us. Ryan's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. $17,000, I said quietly. 3 months. He set the fork down. I need you to explain it, I said, and I need the truth. Ryan stared at the statements. His face had gone pale again, the same color it turned when he first saw me on the porch. I told you, he said. I needed it for investments. What investments? Crypto. Stocks. Opportunities. I tapped the paper. Show me. What? Show me the accounts. Show me where the money went. Show me the returns you made. His jaw clenched. I don't have to show you anything. Yes, you do. I leaned forward. Because that money wasn't just yours, Ryan. It was your mother's. It was mine. And if you took it without asking, that makes it theft. I didn't steal. Then show me. He stood up fast enough to knock his chair back, walked to the window, hands on his hips, staring out at the dark. You don't understand, he said. Then help me understand. I was trying to build something, Dad. I was trying to make a better life. By taking what wasn't yours? He spun around. You gave me access. For emergencies. This was an emergency. His voice rose. I was drowning, okay? I was drowning and that money was the only way out. I stood up slowly. Drowning in what? He didn't answer. I picked up the statements and held them out. Either we talk like men tonight, or I call the sheriff in the morning and we talk like criminals. Ryan's face crumpled. He pressed his hands to his eyes, shoulders shaking. Don't, he whispered. Please don't. He cried like he was 12 again, but the words coming out of his mouth belonged to a stranger. We sat in the living room on that enormous couch. Ryan had his head in his hands. I sat 3 feet away, waiting. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the occasional sound of Amber moving around upstairs. There is no crypto, Ryan said finally. I didn't say anything. There never was. His voice cracked. I made it up. My chest tightened, but I kept my face still. Keep going. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. The job in Denver, it's real, but it's not what I told you. I'm not a sales manager. I'm a junior associate. I make $42,000 a year. $42,000 in a house that cost at least $1 million. The promotion, I said. The corner office. Lies. All of it. He looked at me, eyes red. I wanted you to be proud of me. So you lied. I wanted to be the kind of son you deserved. The kind who made it. Who didn't struggle. Ryan. And then I met Amber. He laughed bitterly. She came from money. Real money. Her friends, her family. They all lived like this. And she expected me to keep up. So I did. With my money. He flinched. I thought I could pay it back. I thought if I just borrowed it for a little while, I could invest it, make it grow, put it all back before you noticed. But you didn't invest it. No. His voice dropped to a whisper. I spent it. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. On what? This house, the down payment, the cars, the furniture, the trips, the clothes, the ring. He gestured around the room like he was presenting evidence at his own trial. I spent it on looking like someone I'm not. I sat back and stared at the ceiling. The chandelier hung above us, 1,000 little crystals catching the light. The family trusts, I said. The 50,000. I forged your signature on the withdrawal form. The words hit me like a punch. You what? I had to. He was crying again, full tears now, running down his face. The bank needed both signatures, yours and mine, so I practiced your name until I got it right, and I signed the form myself. I couldn't breathe. That's fraud, Ryan. I know. That's prison. I know. He stood up, pacing now, hands pulling at his hair. You think I don't know? I've been terrified for 6 months. Every time the phone rang, every time I saw a cop car, I thought it was over. I thought they were coming for me. Why didn't you tell me? Because I'm a coward. He spun to face me. Because I blocked your calls and told myself you'd never find out. Because I convinced myself I could fix it before you knew anything was wrong. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, who I'd taught to fish and throw a ball and change a tire, who I'd held when his mother died, who I'd believed was good. You stole from me, I said quietly, from your own father. I'm sorry. His voice broke completely. Dad, I'm so sorry. And you lied to everyone. Your friends, your girlfriend, me. I know. You told people I was taken care of, didn't you? That's what Amber said. You told her I didn't need anything. He nodded, unable to speak. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the neighborhood was dark and quiet. Perfect houses, hiding perfect lies. I raised you better than this, I said. I know. Your mother would be ashamed. That broke him completely. He collapsed back onto the couch, sobbing into his hands, shoulders heaving. I stood there and watched my son fall apart, and I didn't know if I wanted to comfort him or walk out the door and never come back. Turns out, my boy wasn't just stealing from me. He was renting a life with my dead wife's money. The bedroom door upstairs flew open. Amber came down the stairs fast, her face twisted with fury. She was still dressed, hadn't gone to bed. She'd been listening. "Are you serious?" she shouted at Ryan. "Are you fucking serious right now?" Ryan looked up, wiping his face. "Amber, you told me you had money." She stopped at the bottom of the stairs, pointing at him like a prosecutor. "You told me you were successful. You told me we were set. We are. We're not." She laughed, high and manic. "You're broke. You're worse than broke. You're a thief. Amber, please." "No." She held up a hand. "I'm done. I'm done with this." She turned and ran back upstairs. I heard drawers opening, things being thrown around. Ryan stood up. "Amber, wait." She came back down, carrying a Louis Vuitton suitcase in each hand, dropped them in the foyer with a thud. "I'm leaving," she said. "Where are you going?" "My mother's. My sister's. Anywhere that isn't here." She went back upstairs for more bags. Ryan followed her. "You can't just leave." "Watch me." I stayed in the living room, listening to them shout at each other. Amber screaming about promises, about the life he'd sold her, about the wedding she'd been planning. Ryan begging, pleading, trying to hold on to something that was already gone. She came back down with 3 more bags. Designer luggage, expensive leather, monogrammed. Ryan grabbed her arm. "If you leave, you can't tell anyone. You can't." "Can't what?" She yanked her arm free. "Can't tell people you're a fraud. Amber, please." "You want me to stay quiet?" She stepped closer, voice dropping to something cold and calculating. "Then pay me." Ryan blinked. "What?" "You heard me. You promised me a certain lifestyle. You promised me security. Now I find out it's all stolen money. So if you want me to walk away quietly, if you want me not to call your boss or the police or post about this online, then you're going to pay me to disappear." My hands curled into fists. "How much?" Ryan whispered. 20,000. She crossed her arms. "Cash. By tomorrow." "I don't have 20,000. "Then get it." She looked past him at me. "I'm sure Daddy has more where that came from." Ryan turned to me, face desperate. "Dad?" "No," I said. "Dad, please." "Absolutely not." Amber picked up her bags. "Then I guess everyone's going to find out what kind of man you really are, Ryan. Your boss, your friends, the bank." She smiled. "Good luck explaining the forgery charge." She walked out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the chandelier. Ryan stood frozen in the foyer, staring at where she'd been. Then he turned to me. "I need that money." "No. She'll ruin everything." "She already did." "Dad, please." He was crying again. "I'll pay you back. I swear. Just help me fix this." I looked at my son and saw a stranger. I raised him better than this, but I also raised him alone after his mama died. Some of this dirt is on my hands too. Ryan showed me to a guest room on the 2nd floor. Massive bed, its own bathroom, furniture that probably cost more than my entire bedroom at home. I didn't sleep. I lay on top of the covers, still dressed, staring at the ceiling. My mind ran circles around the same thoughts, wearing grooves into my skull. My son was a thief, a forger, a liar. If I reported this, Ryan would go to jail. Fraud, theft. The judge wouldn't care that it was family money. The law doesn't work that way. Ryan would have a record. His life would be over before it started. Every job application, every background check, every chance at a normal life, gone. And shame. God, the shame. Springfield's a small town. People would talk. The Jenkins boy, the one Harold raised by himself after Carol died, turned out rotten, stole from his own father. Can you imagine? I thought about Carol, what she would say if she could see this. She'd loved Ryan more than anything, held him when he was born, sang to him every night, taught him his letters at the kitchen table. She'd be heartbroken, but she'd also ask the question I couldn't stop asking myself. Where did I go wrong? Ryan was 16 when she died. Still a kid, still learning how to be a man. And I'd tried. God knows I tried. I worked double shifts to keep the house, to pay for his school, to make sure he never felt poor even though we were. But maybe I'd worked too much. Maybe I'd been too tired to notice something breaking inside him. Maybe I'd missed the moment when he stopped believing hard work was enough. Maybe some of this was my fault. I rolled over and looked at the window. Dawn was coming, gray light creeping into the sky. I could forgive the money. Money was just money. We'd been poor before. We could manage it again. But lying, the forging, the way he'd looked at me tonight, like I was a bank he could rob, that I didn't know how to forgive. I heard movement downstairs. Ryan, probably, pacing the living room trying to figure out his next move. I thought about going down there, sitting him at that kitchen counter and making him a plan. Sell the house, sell the cars, get a cheap apartment, pay back every cent over time, even if it took years, be a father, help him fix it. But another part of me, the part that had been driving for 2 days on nothing but coffee and anger, wanted to walk out that door and let Ryan face the consequences alone. He was a grown man. He made his choices, and forgery was a crime. I sat up and put my head in my hands. The couch I was sitting on probably cost $8,000. The bed behind me, another $5. The rug under my feet, the art on the walls, the lamps, the curtains, all of it bought with money stolen from a woman who'd been dead 16 years. Ryan had been renting a life with Carol's memory, and when the money ran out, he'd reached for more. I thought about the check, the family trusts, $50,000 we'd saved for grandkids who might never exist now. I'd signed both our names on that trust paperwork 20 years ago, made it clear that major withdrawals needed both signatures to protect against exactly this. And Ryan had practiced my handwriting until he could fake it. That took planning. That took practice. That took looking at my signature over and over until he could reproduce it perfectly enough to fool a bank. That wasn't a mistake. That was a decision. I stood up and walked to the window. The neighborhood was waking up. Lights coming on in houses. People start their expensive lives. I had to choose. Press charges and destroy him, or stay quiet and teach him nothing. The sun broke over the horizon, painting everything gold. I made my decision. You want mercy, son? Mercy has a price, and you're gonna pay it down to the penny. I came downstairs at 6 a.m. Ryan was asleep on the couch, still dressed, an empty bottle of wine on the coffee table beside him. I made coffee in his expensive machine. Took me 10 minutes to figure out how to work it. The thing had more buttons than my truck dashboard. When the pot was full, I poured 2 cups and set one on the table next to Ryan. Wake up, I said. He stirred, groaned, and opened his eyes. It took him a moment to remember where he was. Then he saw me and sat up fast. Dad, drink your coffee, I said. Then we're going to talk. He picked up the cup with shaking hands. I sat in the chair across from him and waited until he'd taken a few sips. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You have 60 days to sell this house. Ryan's eyes went wide. Dad, I can't. 60 days. List it. Find a buyer. Close the deal. I don't care if you take a loss. But where am I supposed to? You found an apartment. A cheap one. 1 bedroom. Maybe 2 if you can afford it on your actual salary. No granite countertops. No wine fridges. Nothing you can't pay for with your own money. He set the cup down. Dad, the cars get sold too. Both of them. You buy something used that runs. I don't care what it looks like as long as it's paid in cash. How am I supposed to get to work? The same way I did for 40 years. You drive what you can afford. His face was pale. He looked like he might be sick. Every dollar you make from selling this stuff goes toward paying back what you stole. The house, the cars, the furniture, all of it. You liquidate everything, and you give me a full accounting. That won't even cover half. I know. I leaned forward. Which is why you're going to pay me back monthly. $800. Every month. For as long as it takes. I can't afford that. Then you get a second job. You deliver pizzas. You stock shelves. You do whatever it takes because this is the deal. You pay me back, or I go to the police. The words hung in the air between us. Ryan's hands were shaking. You'd really do that? Send me to prison? If you don't hold up your end, yes. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Every Sunday, I continued, we're going to have a call. Video call. I want to see your face. You're going to tell me how much you made that week, how much you paid toward bills. how much you're putting toward the debt. I want receipts. I want bank statements. I want complete transparency. You want to treat me like a child. I want to treat you like a man who made a mistake and is trying to fix it. I stood up. But if you lie to me again, if you hide $1 or skip one payment or miss one call, the deal is off and you can explain the forgery to a judge. Ryan's jaw clenched. His eyes were wet, but he wasn't crying yet. Do you understand? I asked. He nodded. Say it out loud. I understand. You have 60 days to sell the house. Then you start paying me back. $800 a month. Every Sunday we talk. No lies, no excuses, no second chances. And if I do all that, his voice cracked, if I pay it all back, then maybe we can start rebuilding what you broke. He looked down at his hands. They were still shaking. Amber's going to tell people, he said quietly. Let her. You're going to tell them yourself anyway. His head snapped up. What? We'll get to that, I said. Right now, you need to call a realtor. I walked into the kitchen and rinsed my coffee cup. Behind me, I heard Ryan crying. Quiet sobs he tried to muffle with his hand. I didn't turn around. Sometimes mercy has to be hard to mean anything. Nothing humbles a man faster than watching his flat-screen TV sell for $50 to a college kid. The for sale sign went up 3 days later. I flew back to Springfield to handle some business, but I returned 2 weeks after that to watch the circus. Ryan had hired an estate sale company. They walked through the house putting price tags on everything. The couch, the dishes, the artwork, the lamps. Everything he'd bought with stolen money now marked down to move fast. I sat in a lawn chair in the driveway and watched people pick through my son's life. The 80-inch television went first. A kid in a college sweatshirt offered $40. Ryan tried to negotiate, saying it was worth $3,000 new. The kid shrugged and started to walk away. Ryan called him back and took the $40. I watched my son's face as he handed over the TV. He looked like he was handing over a kidney. The furniture went piece by piece. The sectional couch for $300, the dining table for $250, the bed frame for $75. Everything that had looked so impressive in the showroom looked cheap and desperate in the driveway with tags on it. By noon, the driveway was empty except for a few lamps nobody wanted. Ryan sat on the front steps with his head in his hands. The estate sale lady handed him an envelope with $4,200 in cash. Everything he'd owned, reduced to a stack of bills that barely covered 1 month's mortgage. The car's next, I said. Ryan looked up at me, exhausted. Can't I keep one? No. Dad, I need a car to get to work. You'll get one after you sell these. He stood up slowly, like his bones hurt. This is cruel. There are consequences. The Mercedes dealer offered him $60,000 for both cars. Ryan had paid $95,000. He tried to argue, saying they were barely driven, practically new. The dealer said he had 10 more just like them on the lot. Ryan signed the papers. We walked out of the dealership and stood in the parking lot. Ryan looked back at the cars through the window, sitting under bright lights, like they'd never belonged to him at all. I need a ride, he said quietly. I know. We drove to a used car lot on the east side of town. Older vehicles, dents and scratches. The kind of place that sells cars for what they're worth instead of what they look like. Ryan found a 2008 Honda Civic with 160,000 miles, faded blue paint, cloth seats, no backup camera. The salesman wanted $4,000. Ryan got him down to $3,500. He paid cash and drove it off the lot. I followed him back to the house in my truck, watched him park that little Civic in the 4-car garage next to the empty spaces where the Mercedes used to sit. He got out and stared at it. This is what I drove in high school, he said. I remember. I swore I'd never drive something like this again. Maybe that was the problem. He turned to look at me, anger flashing across his face, but he didn't say anything, just walked into the house. Over the next 3 weeks, Ryan sold everything else. The watches went to a pawn shop for a quarter of what he'd paid. The designer clothes went to a consignment store. The furniture that didn't sell at the estate sale went to Goodwill. I flew out one more time to help him pack what was left. We loaded his Civic with 2 suitcases of clothes, a box of kitchen stuff, and a duffel bag of personal items. That was it. Everything else was gone. The house closing happened on a Thursday. Ryan walked out with a check for $68,000 after paying off the mortgage and fees. He deposited it into the account we'd opened together, the one I had full access to. That afternoon, we drove across town to his new apartment. Studio, 4th floor, no elevator, $650 a month including utilities. We carried his stuff up 4 flights of stairs. Ryan was breathing hard by the 3rd trip. I felt it in my knees, but I didn't complain. The apartment was smaller than his old living room. Kitchenette in one corner, bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, a single window that looked out at a parking lot. Ryan set his suitcase down and stood in the middle of the empty room. "This is worse than my first apartment in college," he said. "That one had 2 bedrooms," I reminded him, "and I paid for it." He sat down on the floor, back against the wall, and stared at nothing. I sat down next to him. We didn't talk for a long time. Finally, Ryan said, "I ruined everything, didn't I?" "Yes. Was it worth it? Making me do all this?" I looked at him, really looked at him. His face was thinner. He had circles under his eyes. His hands, which used to be soft from his desk job, had calluses now from moving furniture and packing boxes. He looked older, harder, more real. "Ask me in a year," I said. Paper remembers what pride tries to forget. 2 weeks after Ryan moved into the apartment, I told him about the letter. "You're going to write to everyone," I said during our Sunday call. "Every relative who needs to know what you did." Ryan's face on the screen went pale. "Dad, no. Your aunts, your uncles, your cousins. Anyone who might hear about this needs to hear it from you first." "I can't." "You can, and you will. It's humiliating. It's honest." I leaned closer to the camera. "You spent months lying to people. Now you're going to spend however long it takes telling them the truth." He put his head in his hands. "What am I supposed to say? Exactly what happened, what you did, why you did it, and how you're making it right. They'll hate me, maybe, but they'll hear it from you." It took him 3 weeks to write it. He sent me drafts. I sent them back with notes. Too vague, too defensive, too many excuses. Finally, he got it right. The letter was 2 pages long, plain language, no justifications. He explained the stolen money, the forged signature, the house he couldn't afford. He explained that he'd lied about his success, that he'd blocked my calls because he was ashamed, that he was selling everything and paying it back. He ended it with an apology that didn't ask for forgiveness. "Send it," I told him. "Dad, send it today." He did. 15 letters went out to families scattered across Missouri, Kansas, and Arkansas. I watched him seal each envelope, write each address in his own hand, walk them to the mailbox himself. "Now the hard part," I said. "That wasn't the hard part?" "No. The hard part is the reunion." The Jenkins family reunion happened every July at my brother's farm outside Springfield. 60, 70 people depending on the year. Potluck lunch, softball game, kids running around until dark. Ryan hadn't been in 3 years. Told everyone he was too busy with work. "You're coming this year," I said. "Dad, I can't face them." "You're going to read that letter out loud." His face was drained of color. "In front of everyone?" "In front of everyone." "Why are you doing this to me?" "Because shame dies in daylight," I said. "You hide this. It follows you forever. You own it in front of people who love you, and maybe they will help you carry it." Ryan argued for 20 minutes, begged, pleaded, said it was too much, said I was punishing him, said he'd already learned his lesson. I didn't budge. July came. Ryan drove his Honda Civic 11 hours from Denver to Springfield, showed up at my house the night before the reunion, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "I can't do this," he said. "Yes, you can. What if they don't forgive me? Then you live with that." The reunion started at noon. By 1 o'clock, 50 people were standing around my brother's barn, plates of food in their hands, kids playing horseshoes in the grass. I stood up on the porch and called for everyone's attention. "Ryan has something he needs to say," I announced. The crowd went quiet. People looked at each other. Ryan stood at the bottom of the steps, holding that letter in both hands. His hands were shaking. He climbed the steps slowly, turned to face his family, unfolded the paper, and he read every word, every detail. His voice cracked twice, but he kept going. When he finished, He folded the letter and looked up. Nobody spoke. Then my brother walked over, put his hand on Ryan's shoulder, and said, "Thank you for telling us." One by one, others came forward. Some hugged him. Some just nodded. A few walked away without saying anything, but nobody threw stones. Ryan stood there on that porch, surrounded by family, and cried like I hadn't seen him cry since his mother's funeral. Paper remembers what pride tries to forget, but people remember who has the courage to tell the truth. Forgiveness isn't a moment, gentlemen. It's 1,000 Sundays. The calls started the week after the reunion. Every Sunday at 4 o'clock Mountain Time, 6 o'clock my time, Ryan's face appeared on my computer screen. The first few months, he looked exhausted. He'd gotten a second job at a warehouse, loading trucks from midnight to 6 a.m., then going to his regular job from 8 to 5. He came home and slept 3 hours, woke up, and did it again. "I made $2,200 this week," he'd say. "Rent is $650, utilities $80, groceries $140, gas $60, $800 to you. That leaves me $70. I'd write it down, check it against the bank transfers. Everything matched. "Good," I'd say. "How are you feeling?" "Tired." "Keep going." Some Sundays he was angry. He'd complain about the work, about how unfair it was, about how long it was taking to pay back money he'd only borrowed in the first place. I'd listen, let him vent. Then I'd remind him why we were doing this. "You forged my name, son. This is what making it right looks like." He'd go quiet, nod, sign off. Other Sundays he'd cry, just break down in front of the camera, saying he was sorry, saying he didn't know how to keep going, saying he was so tired he could barely think straight. Those Sundays were harder. "You're doing the right thing," I'd tell him. "Your mother would be proud of you for this. She'd be ashamed of what I did. She'd be proud of what you're doing now." 6 months in, something shifted. Ryan stopped complaining, stopped crying. He just showed up every Sunday, gave me the numbers, and asked how I was doing. We started talking about other things, the weather, the news, a book he was reading on his lunch breaks. He told me he'd been going to a church near his apartment, not because he was suddenly religious, but because it was quiet, and he could sit in the back and think. "About what?" I asked. "About who I want to be," he said, "when this is over." 8 months in, Ryan got promoted at his day job. Not management, just senior associate, but it came with a raise. $3,000 more a year. "I can pay you $1,000 a month now," he said. "800 is fine. I want to pay more. I want this done." "Then pay more." 10 months in, Ryan looked different, thinner, but stronger. His face had lines it didn't have before, but his eyes were clearer. "I've been thinking," he said one Sunday, "about coming home for Christmas. You're welcome anytime. I mean really coming home, not just for a day, maybe a week. Help you fix that gutter you've been putting off." I smiled. "I'd like that. And Dad?" He paused. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me." I had to look away from the camera for a moment, clear my throat. "You're my son," I said. "I don't know how to give up on you." Those Sunday calls became the best part of my week, not because they were easy. Some were still hard, still painful, but because every single one proved that Ryan was still fighting, still trying, still paying back what he'd taken, not just in money, but in effort and honesty and time. Forgiveness isn't a moment, gentlemen. It's not a single conversation, or a tearful apology, or even a paid debt. It's showing up, every week, every month, every year. It's proving that you meant what you said when you asked for another chance. It's 1,000 Sundays, one after another, until the weight of what you did finally lifts, and all that's left is who you've become. He laid that check on my kitchen table, the same table where I taught him long division, and said, "We're even, Dad. 18 months, 78 Sunday calls, $114,342, paid back in increments that ranged from $800 to $2,000 a month, depending on how many hours Ryan could work. The cashier's check sat between us on the scratched Formica surface. Official bank paper, embossed seal, his name and mine printed in that impersonal bank font. Final payment, $18,340. I picked it up and looked at it. The weight of it felt heavier than paper should. Ryan stood across from me, hands in his pockets. He'd driven straight through from Denver, 12 hours, and arrived at my door at 6 in the morning. He looked tired, but steady. The shadows under his eyes were permanent now, etched into his face like scars that told a story. You counted it? I asked. 3 times. I set the check back down. When did you get this? Yesterday. As soon as the bank opened. You could have mailed it. No. He shook his head. I needed to hand it to you. I looked at my son. He was thinner than he'd been in Denver, harder in the way men get when life stops being easy. His hands had real calluses now, the kind that don't fade. His clothes were clean but worn, jeans with a patch on one knee, a flannel shirt I recognized from 2 years ago. He wasn't the man in the designer suit anymore. He wasn't the boy I'd raised either. He was something in between, something earned. Sit down, I said. We sat at the table, the check between us like a treaty. How much is left in your account? I asked. $42. Ryan, I wanted it done. His voice was firm. I've been carrying this for a year and a half. Every dollar I made, every hour I worked, it all went to this. I need it finished. I slid the check back toward him. Take $500 out of this. You need gas money to get home. Dad, I'm not arguing. You paid your debt. Now take care of yourself. He stared at the check. His jaw worked like he was chewing on words he couldn't say. I destroyed everything, he said quietly. The house, the cars, the relationship. I burned 18 months of my life paying back money I never should have taken. He looked up at me. Was it worth it? I thought about that question, about the Sunday calls, about watching him sell everything he'd built on a foundation of lies, about the night he called me crying because he was so exhausted he'd fallen asleep at a red light and woken up to cars honking behind him. Yes, I said. Why? Because you're sitting here asking me that question. I tapped the table. The Ryan who lived in that house wouldn't have asked. He would have blamed me for making him do this. He would have said it was excessive, unfair, cruel. It was cruel, maybe, but it was also right. Ryan's eyes were wet, but no tears fell. I'm sorry, he said, for all of it, for lying, for stealing, for making you drive out there and see what I'd become. I know. Do you forgive me? I let the question sit between us, looked at the check, looked at my son, looked at the coffee maker Carol bought 20 years ago still sitting on the counter. I forgave you a long time ago, I said, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean there weren't consequences. I know. We're even on the money, I continued. But trust, that takes longer. He nodded. How much longer? I don't know. We'll find out. Ryan reached across the table, held out his hand. I looked at it. Rough palm, scarred knuckles, fingernails with dirt under them from his warehouse job. A working man's hand. I took it. We shook, firm and solid, the way men do when they mean what they're saying without having to say it. Thank you, Ryan said, for not giving up. You're my son. That's not something I know how to do. We sat there a while longer, not talking, just being in the same room without anger or shame filling the space between us. Finally, Ryan stood up. I should get going. Gotta work Monday. You're not staying? Can't afford to miss a shift. I walked him to the door. His Civic sat in my driveway, dusty and reliable. A car that knew what it was and didn't apologize for it. Ryan, I said as he reached for the door handle. He turned back. I'm proud of you. His face crumpled for just a second. Then he pulled himself together, nodded, and got in the car. I watched him drive away, that little blue Honda disappearing down my street, carrying a man I was just starting to know again. Some speeches you give at weddings, others you give at funerals of who you used to be. The reunion came 2 months later. July heat, cicadas screaming in the trees, my brother's farm smelling like cut grass and barbecue smoke. 37 people showed up, cousins from 3 states, aunts and uncles I hadn't seen since Christmas, kids who'd grown a foot since last year. Ryan drove in from Denver, showed up the night before and slept in his old bedroom, the one I'd never changed. Same bed, same curtains, same baseball trophy on the shelf gathering dust. We didn't talk much that night. He was nervous. I could see it in the way he kept checking his phone. pacing the living room, going to the kitchen for water he didn't drink. "You don't have to do this," I told him around 10 o'clock. "Yes, I do. They already know. They read the letter." Knowing and hearing are different things. He went to bed early. I stayed up watching the news I wasn't paying attention to, thinking about the last reunion Ryan attended. 3 years ago, he'd shown up in designer jeans and a watch that cost more than my truck, telling everyone about his big promotion, his beautiful fiancée, his corner office with a view. Everyone had been so proud. Tomorrow, he'd tell them the truth. The reunion started at noon. Tables set up under the oak trees, folding chairs arranged in a semicircle, kids already running toward the tire swing my brother hung last summer. Ryan stayed close to me, shook hands when people approached, accepted hugs from aunts who held on a little too long, answered questions about Denver with short, honest answers that didn't invite follow-up. My brother fired up the grill. Someone brought out a cooler of drinks. The youngest kids started a game of tag that wouldn't end until someone cried. At 1:30, I stood up and cleared my throat. "Folks, can I have your attention?" The conversations died down. People turned to look at me. I saw my brother set down his spatula. I saw my sister-in-law quiet the kids. Ryan has something he wants to say. I sat down. Ryan stood up. He walked to the center of the semicircle, hands empty, no notes. The letter he'd written last year was in his pocket, but he didn't pull it out. "I need to tell you something," he started. His voice was steady. "Some of you already know this from the letter I sent, but I need to say it out loud, to your faces, because that's what men do when they've made a mistake." The crowd was silent. Even the kids had stopped running. 18 months ago, my dad drove to Denver to visit me. He found me living in a house I couldn't afford, driving cars I hadn't earned, pretending to have a life that wasn't real. Someone shifted in their chair. I saw my cousin Ed lean forward. "I stole money from my father," Ryan continued. $17,000 from an account he trusted me with. Then I forged his signature and stole $50,000 more from a family trust that was supposed to be for my kids someday. A woman in the back, my sister, put her hand to her mouth. "I did it because I wanted people to think I was successful. I wanted my girlfriend to think I was rich. I wanted Dad to think I'd made it." His voice cracked. "I wanted to be someone I wasn't, and I was willing to lie and steal to make that happen." He stopped, took a breath. "Look at me. My dad could have sent me to prison. He had every right, but he didn't. He gave me a choice, pay it back or face the law. So I sold everything, the house, the cars, everything I'd bought with his money, and I spent the last 18 months working 2 jobs to pay back every cent." Ryan pulled the crumpled letter from his pocket. "I wrote this a year ago. I was ashamed to send it, ashamed to admit what I'd done, but Dad made me send it anyway, because he said shame dies in daylight." He unfolded the paper and held it up. "I'm not going to read this again. You've heard it already, but I want you to know I meant every word. I'm sorry, for lying, for stealing, for being someone who would do that to his own family." He folded the letter and put it back in his pocket. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to trust me. I just wanted you to hear me say it to your faces. That's all." He stood there, waiting. Nobody spoke. Then my brother walked over. He's a big man, 6'3", hands like catcher's mitts from 40 years of farm work. He stopped in front of Ryan and looked down at him. "Take a man to do what you just did," he said. Then he pulled Ryan into a hug. That broke the dam. People stood up. My sister came over crying. Ed clapped Ryan on the shoulder. My cousin Sarah, who'd always been like an older sister to Ryan, wrapped him in her arms and didn't let go for a full minute. Not everyone came forward. A few stayed in their chairs, watching. My Uncle Tom left without saying goodbye. That was his right. But more people came to Ryan than turned away. I watched my son stand in the center of his family, accepting their forgiveness with the kind of humility that only comes from truly understanding what you've lost. When it was over, Ryan walked back to me. I held out my hand. He took it. We shook, firm and square, and I said, "Your mother would have been proud of you today." His eyes filled with tears, but he smiled. We didn't fix everything that night, but we started sitting in the same silence without wanting to run. The reunion ended around 8, cars pulling out of the gravel driveway, kids sleeping in back seats, promises to do it again next year. Ryan and I drove home in a comfortable quiet. He followed me in his Civic, headlights steady in my rearview mirror the whole way. Back at the house, I made iced tea the way Carol used to, brewed strong, sweetened light, served in the tall glasses with the faded flowers on them. We took our drinks out to the porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. The street was quiet except for someone's sprinkler and a dog barking 3 houses down. Ryan sat in the porch swing. I took the old metal chair I'd been meaning to repaint for 5 years. For a while, we just sat. "I've been thinking about trade school," Ryan said finally. "Yeah, HVAC, maybe electrical." He took a sip of tea. "The warehouse job is fine, but it's not a career. I need something with a future. Those are good fields. Pays decent. Benefits. Union if I want it." He looked at me. "I called a school in Denver. They have a program that starts in the fall. I can work days and go to class at night. That's a lot. I'm used to it a lot now." I smiled. "I guess you are." We sat quiet again. The swing creaked as Ryan pushed it gently with his foot. "Tell me about Mom," he said. I looked over at him. "What do you want to know? What you miss most?" I thought about that. About Carol's laugh, her hands, the way she sang while washing dishes even though she couldn't carry a tune to save her life. "The little things," I said. "How she'd fold my shirts. How she knew when I'd had a bad day before I said a word. How she'd sit right where you're sitting and read the newspaper out loud because she knew I hated my reading glasses." Ryan smiled. "I remember that. She loved you more than anything," I said. "Used to worry herself sick when you were out late. I'd tell her you were fine. You were just being a teenager. She'd say, 'I know, but I'm his mother. Worrying is my job.' What would she say now about all this?" I looked at the sky, at the colors fading to purple. She'd say you made a mistake. She'd say you fixed it. And she'd say that's all anyone can ask for. Ryan's voice was thick. "I wish she was here." "Me too, son." We sat with that for a while. The hurt of it. The missing. Carol had been gone 16 years, but some absences never shrink. "I don't know how to be better," Ryan said quietly. "I know I paid the money back. I know I did the work. But I don't know how to be the kind of man you and Mom wanted me to be." "You start by being honest," I said. "Even when it costs you. Especially then. That's it. That's the foundation. The rest builds from there." The dog down the street stopped barking. The sprinkler shut off. The neighborhood settled into the night. "Dad," Ryan said. "Yeah? Can I come home for Christmas?" I looked at him. "You don't have to ask." "I know, but I want to ask. I don't want to assume I'm still welcome." "You're always welcome. This is your home." He nodded, set his empty glass on the porch rail. "I should head out early tomorrow. Got a long drive. Stay another day." "Can't. Work Monday. They'll understand if you're late once." "No," he said firmly. "I show up on time. Every time. That's who I am now." I smiled. "All right then." We sat a while longer, not talking, just being. Father and son, sitting on an old porch in a small town, watching the stars come out. It wasn't perfect. We hadn't fixed everything. There were still scars, still questions, still moments when I'd look at him and remember the lies. But we were sitting in the same silence now, without one of us wanting to run. And that was enough for tonight. If you're watching this, and your phone's gone quiet too, don't wait 8 months like I did. My name is Harold Jenkins. I'm 73 years old now, and I live in Springfield, Missouri. My son calls me every Sunday at 4 o'clock, and he hasn't missed one in 2 years. If you're listening to this story, maybe it's because you recognized something. Maybe your son stopped calling too. Maybe your daughter moved away and the conversations got shorter. Maybe someone you love is pulling away and you don't know why. Let me tell you what I learned. First, trust, but verify. I gave Ryan access to that account because I trusted him. That wasn't wrong, but I should have been checking the statements every month. Trust doesn't mean blind. It means you believe someone will do right, and you pay attention to make sure they do. My generation, we don't like asking questions. We think it's rude, think it shows doubt. But there's nothing wrong with saying, "Show me the receipts. Help me understand. Walk me through this." That's not distrust. That's love that stays awake. Second, love doesn't mean enabling. When I found out what Ryan did, part of me wanted to fix it quietly, pay off his debts, smooth everything over, pretend it never happened. That would have been easier. It also would have destroyed him. The hardest thing I ever did was lay that deal on the table and refuse to budge. Make him sell the house. Make him work 2 jobs. Make him face the family and admit what he'd done. But if I'd fixed it for him, he'd still be that man in the designer suit. He'd still think consequences were optional. He'd still be living a lie. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face what they've earned. Third, a man's dignity is his greatest inheritance. I didn't leave Ryan money. I didn't leave him property or investments or a trust fund he could fall back on. I left him the knowledge of how to work, how to keep your word, how to face your mistakes, and pay them back in full. That's what my father left me. That's what Carol and I tried to teach Ryan. It didn't take the first time, but it took the second. Your kids don't need your money as much as they need your example. They don't need comfort as much as they need character. And character only comes from doing hard things when no one's watching. Fourth, redemption is real, but it's never cheap. Ryan paid back $114,000. That's the number people remember. But what he really paid was 18 months of his life. 2 jobs, no vacations, no new clothes, no going out with friends, nothing but work, sleep, and paying down a debt he created. That's what redemption costs. Time, effort, consistency, showing up every single week and proving you meant what you said. If someone asks for a second chance and they're not willing to pay that price, they're not asking for redemption. They're asking for permission to do it again. Fifth, sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the exact same thing. Every Sunday for 18 months, I had the power to end Ryan's punishment. I could have said, "That's enough. You've learned your lesson. Stop working yourself to death." But he hadn't learned it yet. Not fully. And I knew if I let him off early, he'd think the lesson was, Dad will always bail me out. So I held the line, even when it hurts, even when I could see how exhausted he was, even when every instinct I had said to make it easier. That's what being a father is. Doing the hard thing because it's the right thing, even when your heart is breaking. Now, if you're sitting there and your phone hasn't rung in months, here's what I'll tell you. Don't wait. I waited 8 months. 8 months of telling myself Ryan was busy, making excuses, convincing myself everything was fine. And all that time, he was drowning in lies and I wasn't there to throw him a rope. Go. Show up. Knock on the door. Even if they don't want to see you. Even if it's uncomfortable. Even if you find something you don't want to find. Because here's the truth. Your kids need you. Even when they're 30, 40, 50 years old. Even when they act like they don't. Even when they've cut you off. They need to know you're still there. Still checking. Still caring. Still willing to drive 1,100 miles if that's what it takes. But here's the other truth. You can't fix them. You can show them the path back, but they have to walk it themselves. You can hold them accountable, but they have to do the work. Your job isn't to make their life easy. Your job is to make sure they know what easy costs. Ryan and I talk every Sunday now. Most weeks it's just small talk. Weather, work, what we had for dinner. But every conversation is proof that we made it through. We're not the same men we were 2 years ago. I'm not the father who trusted blindly. He's not the son who thought lying was easier than working. We're better, harder, more honest. And that's worth more than any house, any car, any lifestyle we could have bought with my dead wife's money. Carol used to tell me, "You can't protect them from everything, Harold. You can only teach them how to survive." I didn't understand that when she was alive. I thought protection meant keeping them safe from pain. But she was right. Pain is part of it. Consequences are part of it. Failure and shame, and having to rebuild from nothing, all part of it. You don't protect your kids from those things. You walk through them together. And on the other side, if you did it right, they're stronger than they were before. My son stole from me, lied to me, cut me out of his life because he was ashamed of what he'd done. And I'm more proud of him now than I was when he lived in that mansion, because now he's earned it. If you're watching this, I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope your son calls. I hope your daughter answers. I hope whatever silence has grown between you starts to shrink. But if it doesn't happen today, don't give up. Keep calling. Keep showing up. Keep being the kind of person they'll want to come home to when they're ready. Because forgiveness isn't a moment, gentlemen. It's 1,000 Sundays, and every single one is worth it.